Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Tessa Greco. Myself and my colleague Jenny Weigel will be presenting to you all today on the Energy Technology Innovation Partnership Project, our Cohort 5 informational webinar, and would love to jump right in. You'll see just a brief overview of the agenda. We intend to cover the ETIP program overview, as well as go into some depth on the two technical assistance tracks that are offered within ETIP. We'll provide some recent ETIP project examples so folks can get a sense for what the program is able to offer in terms of technical assistance support. We'll provide an overview of the application and community selection process, as well as the new to this program subcontract structure that will be offered to attendees. And then we'll round out the hour with questions that come in through the chat and Q&A. Just a few housekeeping items to start us off. This webinar is being recorded, and the video is going to be posted to our ETIP website in a couple of weeks once we get that readied. We will remind you all to ask any questions that you have in the chat bar or the Q&A. And those questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Please do keep your cameras and mics off for bandwidth. And then finally, a Spanish version of the PowerPoint will be available for distribution about 2 weeks following this webinar. If you have any questions or have had any difficulty understanding in the meantime, please do reach out to your regional partner point of contact and or the ETIP general mailbox, and we will answer your questions as we receive them. So to start us off, I'm going to give a brief overview of the ETIP program. The Energy Technology Innovation Partnership Project, or ETIP as we affectionately call it, is a collaborative effort undertaken by the U.S. Department of Energy, 4 national laboratories, and 9 regional partner organizations. The ETIP team provides direct technical assistance to coastal, remote, and island communities with the goal to increase their energy resilience as that is defined by your communities. We do understand, and why this program is in existence, that coastal, remote, and island communities face unique energy challenges for various reasons due to their geographic isolation, which can contribute to issues with energy access, quality, affordability, and reliability. So the ETIP technical assistance helps address those challenges with community-driven solutions that aim to increase, again, their long-term energy resilience. We noted the partnership model, and it's grown to be pretty extensive. So we receive our sponsorship and support from the U.S. Department of Energy. And their main role is to foster that cross-technology collaboration, planning, and solutions that are embedded within the ETIP program. We have 4 national laboratories which are providing that deep energy sector experience and expertise and are actually delivering the technology neutral technical assistance. Technology neutral in this context just means we're responding to the needs that are defined by their community, by your communities, and tailoring or customizing technical assistance support so that you receive support directly related to what you're asking for. The only caveat is that it has to be energy system related. We have 9 regional partners. These are local, on-the-ground regional organizations that facilitate the stakeholder engagement and outreach to communities that we work with through ETIP. And we really rely on our regional partners to provide that local insight, regional insight, trust, and community-based perspectives that are needed to facilitate successful technical assistance within the program. And then we currently have 57 communities as part of the ETIP portfolio. Um, each have applied in over 4 cohorts with unique challenges, values, and goals. We ask our communities to apply in to identify those energy challenges and ideal outcomes that they would like to obtain through the ETIP technical assistance, as well as be willing to share their experiences and learnings regionally and nationally as it's appropriate. This map shows the ETIP communities that we've supported as the little green dots in the first 4 cohorts of ETIP, as well as the locations of our regional partner organizations and national laboratories. So we're spread across the country, and you can see really well defined along the coastlines, islands, and Alaska. So we've got a pretty spread out geography, and we've got great organizations supporting in each region that we have presence with ETIP. Our eligibility is shifting slightly from cohort 4 to cohort 5. So I'll walk through eligible organizations or communities that are able to apply to ETIP, as well as those that would be ineligible for consideration. Eligible communities have to be located in the United States or its territories, as well as in an ETIP supported region defined by our regional partners. And these, in addition to being in a region supported by our regional partners, your communities have to be experiencing some energy resilience challenges due to your remote geography, aging infrastructure, your exposure to harsh weather conditions, or others as deemed appropriate or as advised by your regional partners. Some example organizations that we have within eligibility for ETIP include local governments. So that can be municipal, county, city, or town governments, tribes or tribal organizations, community-based organizations or nonprofits or non-governmental organizations, special purpose districts, for example, school district, water district, sewer districts, US-based academic institutions, and municipal utilities or electric co-ops. Ineligible organizations or applicants for ETIP include single individuals. So there has to be some representation of the broader community within your application. It can't just be a single person applying on behalf of a community. So Pam Wells can't apply on behalf of a community, but Pam Wells, as part of an organization that is representing the community application, can. Employees of DOE or sponsoring organizations or members of their immediate families or households. Individuals who worked at DOE 6 months prior to the submission deadline, employees of federal entities or DOE national laboratories, entities and individuals publicly banned from doing business with the US government, restricted parties on screening lists of departments of commerce, state, or treasury, individuals participating in foreign government talent recruitment programs, and then entities owned by, controlled by, or subject to the jurisdiction or direction of a country of risks government. So those are all of our ineligible organizations for ETIP, as well as contradicting the eligible communities. And we're happy to answer questions and or refer to your regional partners for any clarifications on the eligibility. Here's just an overarching map of eligible regions that we currently support within ETIP. Again, I would reach out to your regional partner noted on this map with any questions around eligibility for your specific community, and they'll be able to advise accordingly. Here's just a look at communities that joined ETIP from 2021 through 2023, so you can get some sense for the communities that are embedded within the program. In its first 3 cohorts, which are represented here, ETIP selected a total of 32 communities to receive technical assistance. And these communities are primarily, as you can see, located in Alaska, Pacific Northwest, Pacific Islands, and the East Coast. In cohort 4, we had 25 communities join the 4th cohort. So that was a marked increase of accepted communities that we saw from cohort 3 into cohort 4. And we do anticipate a similar size cohort in cohort 5 for this application period. So what exactly is ETIP technical assistance, and how can you think about it when forming your own application? So technical assistance within ETIP can take many different forms. And at the core of any technical assistance project is typically a question or a set of questions that technical experts at the Department of Energy's national labs can answer using data-driven economic, environmental, and/or grid analyses. Technical assistance-focused questions might include how much of my community's energy consumption could be met with locally generated energy? Which efficiency measures would have the greatest impact on my community's energy consumption and costs? What is the most cost-effective path to meeting our energy goals? How can we increase access to power during extreme events or harsh weather conditions and improve reliability? So an ETIP project may explore topics such as different energy generation types, different technologies, or locally generated sources that a community could consider when thinking about how to diversify or create more resilience, built-in backup, if you will, among their energy or the community's energy generation. Energy efficiency and electrification questions, regulatory questions, again, how do rate structures affect your community's energy costs? How can you work with your utility and PUC to understand how rate structures can be modified to accommodate increasing population demand in summer months, for example, for those island communities that are grappling with huge increases in population during the summer months. And then transmission and distribution questions. How do we increase access, again, to that reliable power? How can a microgrid be designed and developed for my community? What sort of integration challenges exist when bringing on other localized generation sources, whether it be solar, hydropower, geothermal, or others? So in addition to answering a central set of questions, ETIP's technical assistance provides support for activities that ensure the answers to these questions are actionable. So some of the additional ETIP project activities include strategic planning, and we have a specific track that is dedicated to strategic planning so that a community comes away with a concrete plan, actionable plan for how to advance their energy goals. Techno-economic assessments and modeling and analysis, and that can come in many forms and tackle a variety of different questions and topics. This is a great quote from one of our cohort 1 communities, Eastport, Maine, and they noted that what could have been a pipe dream we now know is achievable because of the research done by the National Lab and the conversations facilitated through our regional partners. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jenny Weigel, to talk about the 2 technical assistance tracks that we offer through ETIP. Jenny, please take it away.
Thanks, Tessa. Yeah, I just wanted to talk you all through the addition that we made in Cohort 4 to allow for new communities that are entering into the ETIP program to really set the timeline and the work that's associated with what's going in alignment with the outcomes that they're particularly expecting. So if you could go to the next slide. The two tracks that we have available are the strategic energy planning track and the technical deep dive. The timeline associated with the strategic energy planning track is set to be much shorter at 4 to 8 months as compared to the 12 to 24 months associated with the technical deep dive. The goal of the strategic energy planning track is really to focus on developing, as Tessa was just mentioning, a strategic energy plan that can help a community to figure out what is the most viable pathway to addressing some of the energy challenges that are the most relevant and the most directly impacting the community participating in ETIP. So the strategic energy planning track itself is structured really to focus on identifying those primary goals, do that initial analysis to understand current energy usage and current energy challenges, and co-develop that plan together with the community and the National Lab researchers. The deep dive track, by contrast, is really focusing on narrowing down onto the challenges that are going to be explored to a much deeper degree and develop a specific scope of work that will set up the community to get the most value out of the time that's spent from the National Lab researchers and complete that technical analysis in alignment with what it is that the community is looking to get out of the program. The intent is that will set them up in a strong way to move forward, ideally with the types of projects that they're hoping to implement over in the near term, and really hopefully provide a lot of that data that will allow for them to take the next steps. Can you go to the next slide? What we've learned from the Cohort 4 application was also to provide a little bit more information on these two tracks that communities can select between. So as communities are putting together their applications, you will be selecting the particular track that you want to apply into based on what it is that you're hoping to get out of the program, and also the available data that you have within your community. So when you're going through the application process, we've shaped the specific questions around making sure that you are set up for success based on the specific track that you're applying into. So the 3 questions that are outlined here are specific parts of the application already, but just for consideration, the first one here is asking if your community already has a strategic energy plan, a resilience action plan, or other similar document that represents your work toward your energy goals. The second question is related to that strategic energy plan. If this is already in existence, has this been developed within the last 5 years? So it is currently reflective of the current issues within your community. And then if this plan does not yet exist, does your community have a specific technical assistance deep dive project in mind, and the data that will be needed to support that analysis? This data collection effort is fairly significant, so we just want to make sure that we are setting communities up to both be able to complete the work that can be done within the set timelines, and also that we are able to provide the support that you're looking for based on the data that is available. So these are in the application to guide applicants as you're putting together that specific application. But if you do have further questions on this, please make sure to have this conversation with your regional partner ahead of time, and make sure that when you put in that application, you're applying for the track that is the most applicable for the work that you're trying to accomplish within the program. We will not be able to change tracks from the application itself. So do strongly recommend you put some thought into the track that is the best fit for what you're trying to do. Next slide. So to provide a little bit more detail as to what goes into that timeline for each of these two tracks, under strategic energy planning, within that 4 to 8 months, we'll set some we'll do some vision and goal setting work for that first month, where the community will work with the regional partner team to identify that broader vision and the prioritized goals they would like to focus on over the rest of that period. We will work on a baseline assessment for that energy planning process, and this will also involve some data collection efforts. So we'd strongly recommend reaching out to your utility ahead of time and including them as a part of your application to make sure that you're able to access that data as a part of that baseline assessment. The scenario analysis and modeling is a work that's being done to represent that baseline assessment, in addition to gathering some of that feedback on the community vision and goal setting that was done as a first step on this. And we'll close it out with that community energy plan that was really developed with the available data, the community priorities, and community buy-in that was shared through that process together. So communities are expected to leave this program then with a path forward as to what are some realistic next steps as to how they can make a difference toward their energy goals. Next slide. And this timeline here is largely a lot of the details that I just went through for the first 3 rows. But I did want to point out the last row that's in this picture here that's focusing on the knowledge sharing component. So a lot of the strength of this program has come from learning from past experiences from communities that have participated, learning from the feedback shared in the program structure and in what types of projects are the most successful. So as you apply into ETIP, a big part of this is sharing your experiences, sharing your feedback on how we can improve this program, and really developing that community and that network of folks who have participated in this program overall. So once you get to the end of the program itself, we will gather any and all feedback you have. It's a huge value add for us to make sure we understand your experiences. And at the end of the strategic energy planning track, based on the timeline, communities that have successfully completed that within that 4 to 8 month time period will have the option to reapply into the technical deep dive track to further explore one of the particular areas that was of the most interest that they identified during the energy planning process. That is certainly not required, but is an option that we did want to note for anyone who was interested in exploring the deep dive track, but really just needs to spend that time first doing some of that baseline analysis. Next slide. And similarly, this is an outline for the timeline for the deep dive. We will spend the first month or 2 doing onboarding work, outlining some of that visioning and setting some of those priorities and goals. The second step here, we'll spend a significant amount of time scoping out the technical assistance that will be of the most value to your team. So a lot of what we've heard is that this takes longer than expected, but we really just want to make sure that where we're expending the effort on this part of the project is as relevant and applicable to what the outcomes are that you're looking for through ETIP. So we'll spend that time, make sure everyone's in agreement in the direction for the project before we start the 12 to 15 months of that technical assistance that we'll be performing. So that'll be a significant amount of time where we will go back and forth. We'll gather your feedback as that analysis is being performed, share updates as the work is being completed, and provide answers to questions as it evolves. And then in the last 2 to 3 months, we'll be passing this back over to the community with the final analysis and the results from the work that was accomplished, and transitioning this back to the regional partner who you will have worked with in the beginning of the program. You'll have the opportunity to continue to work with the regional partner to identify any other follow-on opportunities to support you in taking those next steps that you've been able to identify as a part of the program here. So our hope is that this is set up to allow for some iteration in the work that's being done and really gather your feedback throughout. But just making sure that we're focusing on the type of work that is the most useful for you and your community. Next slide. And similarly to the strategic energy planning slide on this, I also wanted to point out the knowledge sharing component, where we will ask for your feedback throughout the process, ask for, any of the work that you've been doing in performing outreach in your community, sharing any of the outcomes from this work, and making sure that we're really creating that network of communities that have been involved in this program and continue to learn from one another. Next slide. All right, and then the last slide that I have here that I wanted to mention is a quote from one of our past program participants as well, from Ocracoke. They shared that we have greatly benefited from expert research efforts to carefully understand our challenges and help us think differently about potential solutions. So our hope with this program is that we can create a similar environment for you as well. And just wanted to point out sort of what our target outcomes are for the program overall. I think with that, I will hand it back to you, Tessa.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. All right, so I'm going to work through just a few examples of community efforts that we've supported through ETIP previously. I'll provide a couple of strategic energy planning examples as well as some deep dive examples so you can kind of grapple with the types of communities that are applying in and how they're utilizing ETIP technical assistance to advance their energy goals or energy resilience goals. The first example that I'm going to start off with is Gary, Indiana from Cohort 4. They are a part of our strategic energy planning track. This application was led up by a faith-based nonprofit called Families Anchored in Total Harmony. And the application was made on behalf of the city of Gary. So that was kind of the geographic resolution of the application. They've got a population, this is one of our larger communities, so a population of about 67,000, 68,000 people. They are located in Northwest Indiana along the Lake Michigan coastline. And I'm sure as many know, they are home to the historic sprawling U.S. Steel Gary Works, as well as Indiana Dunes National Park. And they are one of just a couple of communities that we support in the Great Lakes region. And certainly we're hoping to do more work with communities in Great Lakes. The energy challenges that they applied in with related to energy affordability, as well as the ability to weatherize their homes for residents so that those costs aren't as high. They noted that they have limited integration or limited application of solar or wind or other localized generation sources into their local grid, and that they experience some pretty frequent and severe power outages, often resulting from flooding and severe storms that they see come through Gary. So the technical assistance that we're offering, again, it's through the strategic energy planning track. So that is a more kind of concrete pathway in that, we're working with Gary to do that energy baselining, the energy visioning, and then identifying where they should or where they want to place their efforts as follow-on opportunities to that strategic energy planning effort. So with the strategic energy planning with the city of Gary, they've noted or identified some great opportunities to pursue in the future. A couple of those are understanding where their critical infrastructure is and how to consider backup in the form of storage and or other kind of resilient or localized generation sources that they can flick on in turn or when needed, and specifically in those emergency scenarios, so that power continues to feed those critical buildings and or services that a community needs to survive through extreme weather events or harsh weather conditions. In addition, they're looking at understanding where they could invest in community solar. And where it's feasible to consider community solar. So the installation of solar at closed schools, abandoned city lots, so they can bulk up their generation assets, hopefully as a result, lower their costs, create kind of more informed decision making among the community around the generation assets that the community invests in and subscribes to. So there's some really great outcomes already coming from the strategic energy planning effort within Gary, Indiana, and some nice actionable things that they can undertake as a result of the planning. Our second strategic energy planning example, also coming from Cohort 4, is Tangier Island in Virginia. Tangier Island, the city of Tangier Island was the applicant into the strategic energy planning track for ETIP and Cohort 4. So municipal government in this case, they have a population of about 325 to 350 people. And Tangier Island is pretty famously known for being a small and shrinking isolated community in Chesapeake Bay. Shrinking, I should note, as the image presents over to the right-hand side, shrinking in terms of land. They are the source of over 1/3 of the blue crab supply in the United States, and the crabbing industry is its main economic driver in Tangier Island. So they certainly want to see that continue, want to see that strong culture of the crabbing industry and history surrounding the crabbing industry continue into the future. The challenges that they noted in their application, they're currently served by a single underwater transmission line, and it's nearing the end of its useful life. They're dealing with costly imports of diesel and other fuels to generate the energy for the island. And they're dealing with an energy inefficient housing and building stock, as well as high heating costs in the winter and high cooling costs in the summer. So with the technical assistance that we're providing to Tangier Island, again, they're in the strategic energy planning track. So first and foremost, we're developing that strategic energy plan, that actionable document that they can take with them after the TA is done. Their goals throughout the planning effort to identify those follow-on activities relate to engaging the youth of the island to ensure that they're committed to staying on the island and committed to seeing some energy, the creation and development and implementation of actionable plans related to their energy system and their energy resilience. The community itself is very keen to preserve its cultural history, plan for emergencies. They want to reduce those peak loads. So in the summertime, understanding how to reduce the costs of the extreme heating the extreme cooling that's required to lower temps in an inefficient building stock, for example. How do we do that, and how do we balance those needs? Create a more efficient heating and cooling system alongside reducing those peak loads. And then exploring community solar, again, installation of solar in common or municipal owned infrastructure so that the entire community can buy in and take advantage of that asset. And then there is a potential to pursue a deep dive track as a result of their strategic energy planning efforts. And we'll explore that as they move along. Moving on, I want to move into our technical deep dive examples. Juneau, Alaska was awarded as part of our Cohort 4 application period. We are still only part of the way through the actual technical assistance delivery for Cohort 4, so it's not complete yet, but there's lots of progress that's been made here. The applicant for Juneau, Alaska was actually Alaska Electric Light and Power, so the utility servicing Juneau. They have a population of about 32,000, which is definitely one of our largest Alaskan communities. It is the capital city with abundant hydro resources, generating 100% of its electricity and providing rates lower than the national average. They are accessible only by boat or plane without any road connections. So contradicting their relatively low electricity costs or rates, um, the living costs and the energy challenges that they applied in with rather, the living costs are about 28% above the national average due to the reliance on air and barge transport, including for petroleum. They have manufactured and multifamily housing, and that the electrification of the MMFH housing is really limited by capital access or financial access, split incentives, and infrastructure gaps. And then they have heat pump and electric vehicle programs which are currently seeing a pretty low uptake in that manufactured and multifamily housing compared to single family homes. So Alaska Electric Light and Power was really interested in understanding how they could increase that uptake and adoption of heat pump and electric vehicle programming so that costs could be reduced for this specific manufactured and multifamily housing units or infrastructure throughout Juneau. So the technical assistance um, that we are working on with Juneau and AELP through ETIP is looking to understand how to plan out the air source heat pump and EV adoption in the manufactured and multifamily housing infrastructure throughout Juneau. We're doing some analysis on the energy use infrastructure and developing some scenarios on cost benefits and trade-offs of various pathways that they can select to define and follow. And then also doing some engaging and educating to the broader community to try and address some barriers to that adoption and uptake in programming and guide program design with AELP. And finally, the last example of a technical deep dive that we're going to be providing is Block Island in Rhode Island. This was part of our Cohort 3 portfolio. The applicant in this case was the Block Island Utility District, excuse me. So the servicing utility for Block Island. They are an island 13 miles off the coast of Rhode Island, accessible by limited ferry and commuter airline service. The island itself is 10 square miles and has an elevation of 0 to 200 feet above sea level. The year-round population is about 1,200, and the summer population balloons to 20,000 people, which is a very common trait that we see within especially our Northeast communities, island communities. And, it specifically speaks to the challenges in creating a rate structure that works for the year-round population, as well as understanding how to kind of ward against or plan for the energy peaks or the demand peaks that you see in that summer season, compared with building out infrastructure to maintain the summer population compared with building out the infrastructure that you need to maintain your year-round population. The energy challenges cited as part of the Block Island application, pretty obvious: extreme summer electricity use peaks, which are reflective of that 1,200 to 20,000 population jump, aging energy infrastructure, and then susceptibility to energy infrastructure damage due to either sea level rise and/or harsh weather conditions, extreme weather events. So the technical assistance that was provided through ETIP included some community education on electricity and the implications of alternative energy generation sources or localized energy generation sources. There was a 2040 energy roadmap developed. So this included an analysis of some load forecasting, understanding how the load and demand of energy would change over that period from now through 2040. The incorporation of different localized generation assets, wind, solar, and a biofuel assessment were taken on as part of this energy roadmap. And then some techno-economic analysis to understand the feasibility and really the economic feasibility for any one of these scenarios as they looked through to 2040. This deep dive effort was able to connect Block Island to the National Community Solar Project to receive additional solar specific technical assistance through that program. So that's just a great example of the ways in which we're able in the lab complex, as well as at Department of Energy, and with our regional partners, connect communities to other programs or other funding opportunities that we think are relevant and are well situated to meet some of your questions and or needs after or during the ETIP technical assistance. All right, yet another example of successful quotable from one of our previous communities in Wainwright, Alaska. They noted that receiving ETIP's Alaska-based support helped us bridge the context gap with national researchers and facilitate more meaningful collaboration. And with that, we'll go on to the application and selection timeline. And I believe, Jenny, I'm passing it back over to you.
Thank you. So you can go to the next slide. I just wanted to briefly outline some of the specific timeline considerations for as you all are developing your application. So we did open up this current application period on April 17th, but it's open now through July 27th. So you'll have the next 2 months or so to work with your regional partner to develop that application and make sure that everything that you're writing in it is, accurately reflective of the type of work that you'd like to do within the program and is meeting sort of what we're looking for in that application process. We will begin the review period after the closure of the application timeline through September of 2025. And we're anticipating that we'll open up that selection announcement for this next cohort of communities this coming fall. Our target is ideally not shortly after September, but there are just some review periods we need to go through internally. So as soon as we know on our end, we will notify all of the communities that have put in an application, both those that were selected to participate and those that were not selected. So just as a reminder, make sure to meet with your regional partner ahead of time to both discuss the work that you'd like to accomplish through the program and also to get their help in developing that application. A number of these regional partners have been involved in the program for years and have experience in supporting communities just like yourselves and figuring out, what are the right ways to frame what it is that you're looking for and making sure that, you are putting your best foot forward in that application. So the link that's noted down here and the QR code will take you to the ETIP homepage where you'll be able to access that full application, see all of the questions that are included, and then also note all of the regional partner contacts that you can get in touch with to support you during that application process. You can submit your application digitally or by mail, and there's details for how to do so on that webpage as well. And then just make sure that you are also including 2 stakeholder support forms as a part of that application too. The intention of including those stakeholder support forms is to give us a better idea of what the holistic representation of the community engagement on the project you're proposing is, and that we have an understanding of who all will be involved in that day-to-day engagement with us as we're making decisions on which projects to go forward with. Next slide. And I won't name everyone on this page here, but this is just the list that is also available on the ETIP website of all of the primary points of contact for the regional partners in each of the regions. These regional partners, as I mentioned, have been involved in the program and are more than happy to help you with the development of your application process. They'll help you with the onboarding process and the beginning of the technical assistance, and will still remain available to you after the technical assistance has concluded. So they are really that continuous point of contact with you all, and are supported by ETIP directly as well. So really, really encourage you to reach out to them as soon as possible, so you have as much time as you can to leverage that engagement with these folks and the expertise they have to share. Next slide. And the last thing I wanted to touch on today is with the shift in Cohort 5, we'll be talking about distributing funding for communities. This is still available as it was available in Cohort 4, but we did just need to change the model as to how we will be distributing the funding to communities directly. So I'm not going to go into all of the detail of what this process looks like right now, but did just want to note for all of you that the subcontract process is a little bit more involved than how the cash has been distributed in past years. The strategic energy planning communities that are selected to participate will be eligible to receive up to $20,000 as a part of the program, and the deep dive communities will be eligible to receive up to $50,000. We are working to streamline this process as much as possible and have the same language within the subcontract and the deliverables for all of the communities that are within each of those tracks, just to make this as easy as possible on all of you. So there will be hopefully less back and forth with your internal teams and the NREL team to get you set up to be a subcontractor and receive those funds from us. We'll provide template forms and documents as possible for the deliverables as often as we can, just again to make it as easy as possible on all of you. And then we'll also be providing support from the regional partner perspective and the lab technical leads for all of that required deliverable completion and the development process. So our intention is to make this as easy as possible, but we also acknowledge that it is a little bit more involved, just so you are aware of that ahead of time. And the regional partners and our NREL team internally here will work to support the community teams that are selected throughout that process, and will provide support just to make sure that you all feel prepared and fully aware and familiar with all the documentation that's required just after the selection and the notification process that we have scheduled for fall of 2025. So I think that is the last slide that we have in here. So happy to open this up for questions and have any discussions that are needed to help you guys as you're thinking about the application.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. I see one question that came through the Q&A chat. The question states, it looks like the majority of these efforts are for residential energy use. Can the strategic energy planning be used for a combination of residential and commercial uses, or for local governments like port districts? Great question. And yes, while the examples were largely for residential energy use, when we're covering full towns or cities like Tangier Island, for example, or Block Island, there are commercial or municipal structures or infrastructures, buildings that are incorporated into that planning and analysis. So absolutely, it can be a combination. It often is. And port districts are absolutely eligible. Okay, we have a couple of questions related to whether we can speak to the data that would, or the kind of data categories that would be needed to support deep dive projects and or engagement with utilities in developing an application. So the data needs or requests often vary depending on what the specific questions in the technical deep dive are trying to answer. We can pretty confidently say that regardless of the question that's being posed, it is very helpful to get some understanding for how to access or whether your utility has detailed load data for at a pretty granular level, because we are trying to create accurate outputs and analysis for you all to use in those follow-up endeavors. So load data, outage data is good to understand, especially when we're trying to determine, quality and or resilience hub type questions. So whether you need some backup generation and storage on specific infrastructure, we would really like to understand what the outage data is related to that specific building and or buildings, so that we can size assets appropriately for your resilience needs. For example, that's one use case. So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish within the technical assistance that you apply into or apply for. But I would, in the application process, as you're kind of articulating or developing the type of TA that you'd like to receive, work with your regional partners to define out those scenarios. If there are questions, they should have some good advice from working with utilities previously on ETIP projects for which data will be relevant for your projects. But those are also questions that will help work through during the onboarding and scoping process if you're selected into ETIP. I want to start working through some other questions. All right. Next question, is NREL seeking support from technical consultants to provide energy modeling, clean energy design, engineering, and microgrid optimization, et cetera, services? Not at the moment. That is really what our national lab experts are here to provide in the TA that we deliver through ETIP. So not at this time, but certainly check in with regional partners and or the ETIP email address if you have a specific question that you wanted addressed there. Okay. Let's see. Another question in the Q&A. Our solar community is comprised of members from various communities in Puerto Rico. Can we apply even when we are not limited to just one physical community? That's a great question. The short answer is yes, but within the application, you'll need to work with your regional partner to define out kind of the community characteristics and constraints that you're applying, as well as show buy-in and decision maker support from all of the community members that you are including in your application. I think it is very helpful to have some explanation of geographic similarities, or some understanding for why you're applying as kind of a network or a partnership of communities. But yes is the short answer to that question. All right, we have just a couple of minutes left. There's one additional question in the Q&A. Can you comment on how applications are reviewed for acceptance? Briefly, applications are reviewed. It is a competitive process. They are reviewed against the criteria that we publish on the website. So we have criteria that are listed there, and give some understanding for how applications are reviewed and evaluated or scored, and then a team of Department of Energy and National Lab reviewers prioritize, and ultimately Department of Energy makes recommendations or approves those final selected communities that are awarded through ETIP support. Great. There are so many great questions. Thank you for them coming in. Just one question, how do we find our regional partner? It'd be great that that is listed on the website. Thank you, Sarah, for responding. You go ahead and go to the ETIP website, and you should be able to identify your regional partner for the region that you are in. So based on where you live, you should be able to map to the regional partner that's most relevant for you. There is a question on whether letters of support are needed from communities. Again, letters of support should come from those community members, government representatives, local municipal government representatives, tribal representatives, you know, business decision maker or influencers, utilities, those parties that will be most relevant to informing the success of your project. So we want to make sure that there is adequate buy-in and backing to the project that you're proposing, such that the project will ultimately be able to advance beyond the technical assistance that's provided. So letters of support from communities, I think interpret that's pretty broad, but I think you should do some thinking around which community members will influence the success of your project and which you really need buy-in from to make the project successful. All right. And then I think the last question here, if we can fit it in, there was a recommendation from one of our regional partners to explain how strategic energy planning track communities bring together community partners outside of only the applicant to make sure the plan is inclusive. I touched on that a little bit in the letters of support comment, but the regional partners are really great at understanding which team members are helpful to include in the planning phase and in the application phase so that you set up your projects for success. Oftentimes successful teams include, you know, the driving organization or champion, that person or group of people who are really going to drive progress on the project, that are going to stay accountable to the application that was provided and the plan for the project itself, and are also going to gain that quorum or support from, again, influencers or decision makers within the surrounding community. It is really important that whichever track you are choosing, that you engage with your utility, your servicing utility, early and often. They are critical partners in the success of these projects. They often hold the data and the information that we need to understand all of the questions and various scenarios that you're considering exploring through ETIP technical assistance. So utility providers are definitely a must. And we strongly recommend, you know, you reach out to them early and keep them apprised of the application and the project progress throughout. Otherwise, I'd strongly suggest again reaching out to regional partners and getting their guidance for how and who to include in your application and who to really garner those letters of support from. They'll be just amazing, incredible resources for you all as you're developing your applications to Cohort 5. And I believe we are out of time. And I don't see any other questions. But do encourage folks, if you have any additional questions, please shoot those through the etip at nrel.gov email inbox, or reach out to your regional partner and they'll be able to answer your questions as they come. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If I can get to the thank you slide, there it is. Really appreciate everyone's participation and attention and look forward to seeing your applications. Thank you.